This is FightFans Radio.
Let's get ready to rumble! Oh my God! Unbelievable!
Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier!
It's time!
You're listening to New Mexico's only mixed martial arts and boxing podcast, The Low Blow, on AdamCombatSports.com and FightFans Radio. It is another episode of The Low Blow on FightFans Radio, USCombatSports.com, and Southwest Fight. I am Justin Goodrum, joined by Jorge Hernandez. What's up, man? How's it going?
What's going on, man? Crazy weekend.
Yeah, it has been, man. Before we get going, do you know what Max Kellerman's rap name was? Do you remember that by any chance?
Oh man, I think it was just Max. His brother's name
really?
was Sam, and they were called Sam and Max. That's what they were actually called.
Okay. The reason I bring that up, Max Kellerman, he's a boxing analyst. He raps the theme song. He had a short rap career with his brother back in the day, kind of like Marky Mark. That was Max Kellerman. I think he pretty much denounces it now. It's kind of like Mark Wahlberg. He kind of don't really acknowledge the rap game too much, the rap past.
How funny would that be if Larry Merchant brought that up right on the side? A Larry Merchant and Max Kellerman freestyle battle, man.
I think Larry Merchant, man, he talks all that poetic junk in the beginning. You don't understand what he's saying. He's like Lil Wayne, man, older version.
He talks that bottle talk. That's what he talks.
Exactly.
You can't mess with a man that slurs.
Yeah, no doubt. Today, we're going to break down a huge weekend in boxing. Jorge, you're in Vegas to catch the Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., Sergio Martinez fight, a epic ending to that bout. We'll talk about that. We'll break down Canelo Alvarez's impressive performance on Showtime against Josecito Lopez. And we'll finally we'll get to preview some MMA action with UFC 152. As always, you can get in touch with the show through Twitter, through @TheLowBlow, through email, through lowblow505@gmail.com. We're available to Stitcher Radio app and iTunes. You can also get in touch with FightFans Radio through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Ustream. And it all has the same handle, FightFans Radio. So type that into all those social media outlets, and you'll find FightFans Radio there, our show, along with the rest of the FightFans Radio network. Man, so get going with the standing 8 count. And you got some news about Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Pulling Nick Diaz with the positive drug test for marijuana.
Yes, sir. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. apparently likes the peep. Got caught with positive drug test by the Nevada State Commission. Are you surprised? I'm not really too surprised. I guess we can talk about that here a little later. And it was following his, contest there with, of course, as you mentioned, the epic ending to that Sergio Martinez fight he did have. A little disappointing, that he did test positive. Worst case scenario, up to a year suspension. And they take away that $3 million purse. I don't think it'll happen. I think he has enough people to, slick their way past that.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. So we'll discuss all that in the main event topics, but definitely I want to kind of compare the MMA and boxing aspects to this because we went through this with Nick Diaz. So I want to see if there's any comparison. Let's talk about another UFC injury, and that is Frank Mir getting hurt. He's been injured and is pulled out of his Strikeforce fight against Daniel Cormier. It's been an undisclosed injury. I haven't seen anything within the MMA news about what injury Frank Mir exactly suffered. So he's out, and Fabricio Verdum is trying to campaign his way into that slot. So we'll see what happens. Right now, it has not been 100% confirmed at all if Verdum's going to get the spot, but Verdum wants it. I think him and Arlovsky are both campaigning for that spot, so we'll see what happens. But for sure, I think from Ariel Helwani's Twitter, Daniel Cormier stated that he is still scheduled to fight on November 3rd. So hopefully that fight still happens because I think Daniel Cormier deserves the spotlight before he goes to the UFC. So we'll see what happens. If they can't find an opponent, maybe it's a blessing in disguise. He can just kind of quietly go into the UFC heavyweight division, and we don't have to deal with this whole Strikeforce fiasco. But nevertheless, hopefully they find him an opponent soon.
It's quite possible. And then in other news, according to MMA Junkie, the Ultimate Fighter 16 ratings, probably surprised the hell out of me and Erica. 947,000 viewers. That's far higher than I ever expected for the debut to actually make. Of course, it's lined up to be a Team Carwin versus Team Nelson kind of thing there. And are you surprised by that, Jay?
Really? You're surprised? That's the lowest season debut in the history.
Well, I didn't
of
think
the
it would do
Ultimate Fighter.
that. I didn't think it would do that high. I think the show's gotten to the point where I just didn't think people would care. I was going to be surprised if it broke 600,000, to be honest.
Well, I mean, I hate to be a broken record here, but I've been saying this all along that Ultimate Fighter on a Friday makes no logical sense at all. It's one thing to have a fight night, every couple of months or so on a Friday, but to ask, a common viewer to watch unknown, mediocre MMA fighters on a late Friday night, that's just not happening. So I think it's kind of a lesson learned for the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
I guess the amount of fights, I don't know if that turns people on, if it turns them off. I mean, they had a 2-hour episode that featured 16 elimination fights between.
They're bored.
It was a pretty big decrease from last year when they had, earlier this year when they had 1.3 million viewers for the UFC Fighter Live. The Ultimate Fighter Live earlier this year in March. So hopefully they can do something to turn it up, man.
Yeah, I sincerely doubt it. I think the easy remedy is just to move it to Wednesday night. And I think even though we're kind of bashing, the UFC here, I think we're in year one of this whole UFC Fox agreement. So you have to cut them a little bit of slack. But I still do not understand why you put on your franchise show on a Friday night. Doesn't make any sense to me. But
Erica says to kill it. Is that how you feel, Erica?
Possibly.
Yeah, the entire show needs to be revamped and redone, and they need to get Tim Gunn in there, and he needs to make it work because that show is garbage.
What I picture an old television show with this. It's just The Ultimate Fighter's my dog, Dad. I'll do it. Shotgun.
Yeah, out to the shed, man.
And also, I'm sorry about that stuff. Also, Sarah Kaufman, she scratched from Invicta FC3. Caitlin Young now rematches Leslie Smith. How do you feel about that, Jay?
It's a disappointing development. I was looking forward to see Sarah Kaufman on that card. I've had other things to do, so I think I've kind of freed my schedule to kind of see this version of Invicta Fighting Championships, so it's kind of disappointing not to see Sarah Kaufman on there. At the same time, if she's scrapped, if it's not too much of a serious injury, maybe they can put her on that November card, especially because of the whole Frank Mir injury. You're not going to find any other heavyweight to match to that Mir name, so maybe adding Sarah Kaufman and maybe kind of, putting some stakes as to, if Kaufman wins, she fights Miesha Tate, and the winner gets Ronda Rousey again. Something like that where you can kind of work her back into that title picture in that bantamweight division. But it's certainly disappointing. But that whole card is loaded. Jackson's MMA fighter, Michelle Watterson, is going to be on that card. So, it's disappointing, but Invicta does a good job of just having a full night of fights that people want to see. So,
do you think that hurts the card, though, to lose someone as popular as Sarah Kaufman? No?
I don't think so, because hardcore fans are behind this. What's good about Invicta is that the whole MMA community is 100% behind this thing. With Affliction and with the IFL and with other MMA promotions, there's kind of some little bit of skepticism, and I think the support was more out of, wanting to see the UFC die and wanting to see Dana White suffered. And I think with Invicta, it's much more of a positive feeling. It's much more of supporting women's MMA instead of trying to create any kind of competition towards the UFC. So I don't think it hurts too much. It's just disappointing because you want to see Sarah Kaufman in there after a quick loss to Ronda Rousey. But I don't think the card's loaded. I think it'll be fine.
And also in boxing news, pretty big turnout, I think, especially the way this is being set up. Orlando Salido, who of course is pretty popular now for beating Juan Manuel Lopez in Puerto Rico and beating him twice, will be facing Mikey Garcia. Yeah, me and myself and Will are pretty big on Mikey Garcia. He hasn't looked too, he's been too into his fights the last couple of bouts, but the kid's potential is pretty good. He's undefeated. He's trained by the famous Robert Garcia out there at Oxnard, California. They'll be fighting for the WBO featherweight title. And also on that same card, Vanis Marozyan and Erislandy Lara are going to fight. This is fireworks to me, man. This is two of the best guys at the 154-pound weight class finally getting it on. They've both been rumored to actually fight Canelo and Austin Trout. None of it happened, so these guys decided to go at it, and it should be very exciting. They're calling this a WBC eliminator for the obviously the super welterweight title that Canelo is currently holding. So we'll see how it, and potentially if this actually goes through, because it's going to be awesome. That's a great night of fights.
Yeah, and Showtime's running a card too that same night. So it looks like the night we had this past Saturday night could happen again in November 10th.
Yeah, and with Abner Mares and Anselmo Moreno, it should be pretty good. And supposedly Chris Arreola and Alfredo El Perro Angulo are actually making the returns back on there. Angulo has been seen on HBO recently, making the move over to Showtime. We'll see how he's bounced back since that loss to James Kirtland last year.
No doubt. Before we move on to the next news item, I want to ask you, Jorge. Sure. The Win sponsored the fight with, was it with Canelo or was it Julio Cesar Chavez? This is with
Martinez Chavez fight.
Okay.
That's who the Win sponsored.
So is Win starting to get really into the boxing business now? I'm noticing this news item here that it's going to be from the Win Hotel in Las Vegas with Orlando Salido and Mikey Garcia. Is Win starting to kind of work their way into that MGM Grand Mandalay Bay boxing picture? Like how do they fit into the hierarchy in Vegas? Do you know exactly?
They definitely do. I mean, it's obviously one of the most extravagant casinos when you walk from both the interior and the exterior.
It is.
The casino is beautiful.
It is.
So
yep.
For them to be able to get their name out, they'd have to do it through this. You know, the bigger attractions there in Las Vegas are the fights that actually come in. I won't be surprised if you see them jump into the UFC side of things either. I know Dana has a pretty strong relationship with most of those casinos, especially Mandalay Bay and the MGM Grand, so it's going to be very interesting to see how the Win does play their way into it. They, as of right now, they don't have a venue large enough to actually hold anything as big as the Martinez and Chavez fight. Don't be surprised if a lot of their fights are held out of the Thomas and Mack, and they can just label and throw their name on it. So the Win, just based off of the money that it has, it will eventually become a player in the Las Vegas fighting scene.
Yeah, no doubt. Speaking of the Canelo Alvarez Josecito Lopez fight, apparently it did huge ratings on Showtime, topped 1 million viewers. To kind of put that in perspective, I think the Ronda Rousey fight did above 600,000. I don't really have the exact number, but I don't remember it cracking over 700,000 viewers on Saturday. And with this fight here with Canelo Alvarez, it did a peak audience of about a little bit over 1 million, and it drew a 2.6 rating if you're into the Nielsen ratings at all. So that's a huge deal. I really think this is a positive direction with Showtime Boxing. You know, we've been talking about kind of the resurgence of Showtime trying to compete with HBO, because HBO has had a lot of the big fights, you know, within the past 5 years or so. So if Canelo can stay exclusive to Showtime, this might be, you know, evening the odds between the two networks in this kind of I guess pseudo boxing war, if you want to call that. I don't know. What do you think about Showtime's rating there, Jorge?
I like it for them. It's a very good move for them to bring Canelo over because he's the next superstar. You want to build off of that next guy that's coming up, and he is already the guy as far as it comes to entertainment value. I know you texted me as soon as that fight ended that you were very impressed by his style and that you were entertained, despite the fact that it was somewhat of a mismatch. This guy's going to be pay-per-view here. He's going to be the pay-per-view king for the next 12 years, man. This guy's just incredible. His popularity. He doesn't look like a typical Mexican.
He does not.
Box like a typical Mexican. So he's just an enigma all in his own. When it comes to ratings, the thing that surprised me, and I guess it kind of doesn't just because of who he is, he outdrew the viewership against Chavez Martinez also in Mexico. So
oh, wow. Okay.
A little impressive just based on the fact that Martinez was such a better opponent to Chavez compare Lopez to Alvarez. So it's very impressive to see. And, they did sell a lot of tickets there. I think they sold about 12,000 and gave away a couple of thousand there to the MGM Grand fight.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy that's still, despite the fact that he's been retired for a while and getting fat, is Ricky Hatton, man. Unbelievable. He's probably tossing and turning right now. He reportedly has already sold 18,000 tickets.
He has, yep.
November 24th comeback in Manchester.
Yeah, Will's probably, he's freaking out.
There's 1,000 available just in case anyone is interested in going. The guy hasn't fought in 3 years. He got dismantled by Manny Pacquiao the last time he was out there, but guess what? Manchester loves him. So
is it going to be a heavyweight fight?
Oh my gosh, I hope not.
The way he looks, I mean.
If it's a comeback fight and he's not in shape, he fought Pacquiao at 138.
Jeez. He's going to have to cut off one of his legs to pull that off now, don't you think?
Good at cutting weight. He struggled. I mean, he ballooned all the way to 190, sometimes 200 pounds when he dropped down to 135 range. So it's just insane the way he's actually going about it. And also, very quick, just there's fights locally coming up on September 22nd there in Santa Fe, New Mexico. In Viva Productions and Pennies on the Dollar Entertainment, yes, that's the name of the organization, are hosting this 6-bout fight there in Santa Fe. And as we mentioned, Hollywood Ray Montes, who's the best trash talker here in the state of New Mexico, will be fighting in that, and it should be a decent card. So if you're not a UFC fan, you're not watching the UFC, make sure you make that 40-minute drive up to Santa Fe to check out a good night of boxing.
No doubt. Let's get into our 2-round topics. Do you want to go first, Jorge?
I can go ahead. I'll go first.
You won the coin flip backstage, so you have to go first.
Coin flip. Let's go ahead and go first. The thing I want to talk about here is just very quickly about, I guess, just quick trip I had to Vegas. It was a little disappointing to see that people were divided by nationalities. You tell someone that you were going for Martinez, and then they'd ask you, well, what are you? Aren't you Mexican? And I'd say, yes, my family is. It's just really disappointing to see that people base each other solely based on nationality as opposed to being a fan. I guess that's what makes this sport different with the Latino community. It's more like soccer, to be honest, man. That's what I want to say.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. I think with MMA, it kind of works in the same way. I mean, with Brazil, a lot of anybody with Brazilian descent is going to root for the Brazilians. So, even if Vitor Belfort, he's a massive underdog, but there's going to be plenty of Brazilians, in Toronto pulling for Vitor, and none of them are going to be rooting for John Jones at all. So I think it's kind of the same thing, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. I lucked out too, man. I ended up sitting in an Argentine section. There were about 20 fans around me that were cheering with Argentinian flags. You won't believe who sat in front of me. It was Diana Taurasi's parents, man.
Really? Wow. Her parents.
They were chilling there in front. They liked the party, man. We hung out with them. Her mom was showing us pictures of their grandkids, and she just kept flipping through, and they were holding gold medals and the American flag. I was like, what is that? He's like, oh, we went to my daughter's game. We were like, daughter, Diana Taurasi. And I was like, holy crap. That's
and
so
she
weird.
Wasn't there.
She wasn't there.
Oh, okay.
She's Latina. I had no idea.
Yeah. I guess my rant is specifically on all this ESPN coverage lately. If you watch SportsCenter the past couple of days, you might have noticed John Jones on, I think, yesterday, and then there was Manny Pacquiao and Juan Manuel Marquez on today. And just these interviews are just garbage. I know we're all kind of sensitive to whenever we see a combat sports personality on a national show, that doesn't really cover the sports very well. And I think, we tend to kind of take it a little bit personally if the interview is more towards casual fans. But what I saw on SportsCenter was a joke. Today you had Marquez and Manny Pacquiao playing Rock'em Sock'em Robots. That's ridiculous. This is a nationally televised sports program, and instead of taking their fight seriously, even though we're seeing that bout for the 4th time, there's still some respect that goes to these guys that put their lives on the line here. And just to kind of treat it as a joke, I just don't understand. I realize, they want to lighten up the mood, but it just seemed kind of corny and ridiculous. And in the John Jones interview, you had the interviewer, I forgot what his name was, just asked him questions about different bones in the body because his nickname's John Bones Jones. Like, good joke. Like, it's just insane just to think these people are supposed to be the national authority on the sports world, and yet you get, three of the most recognizable combat sports personalities in the world, and you can't take them seriously. I realize it's not the NFL, it's not the NBA, it's not baseball, but, to show some respect. I don't know. You might accuse me of not having a sense of humor, but I just think in that atmosphere on Sports Center, I just think you got to take it a little bit more seriously.
Were the questions about bones in the body posed? That's what I'm interested in. How were they asked? Was it like a foreign guy asking him?
No.
Do you know what bone is? Come on.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know. I didn't take no any kind of class like that in college or high school. You're just asking us ridiculous questions. What's the bone in your foot, or what's the bone in your elbow? Just stupid questions like that. And then you had today the two boxers, Marquez and Pacquiao, just playing Rock'em Sock'em Robots, and they'd never done it before. They just look bewildered. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are we doing this? And you had the music going. It's insane. Like, what are you doing? Like, and they did the same thing earlier this summer when John Jones was there. So, and I get, ESPN has different shows like Sports Nation. That's a lighter show. I understand, you do stuff differently like that. But on Sports Center, I don't know. It just rubbed me the wrong way.
No, you're completely right, and I completely agree. It's just you have other shows to be doing silly things. So.
Exactly, yeah. So let's talk about our main event topics, and specifically this weekend's boxing action. And we'll take your fight first, Jorge. Chavez Jr. getting a unanimous decision, 117-110, 118-107, and 118-109. Excuse me, that was 118-109 twice. For Sergio Martinez getting the victory, a unanimous decision. Pretty much Martinez dominated the majority of the fight until we got to the 11th and 12th round. From what I've seen from boxing experts, they seemed all to be very impressed with Martinez's performances. But interesting enough, Will, our other co-host who couldn't be here, get well, man. He's having a little bit of voice trouble. But he texted me saying he was not impressed by Martinez's performance at all. I didn't really get any details, but it seemed to me he was not blown away. Despite the exciting 11th and 12th round, he just didn't seem like Martinez was warranted of that number one pound for pound ranking in all boxing. He didn't really say that, but I got that sense from talking to him. So, Jorge, what do you think? Were you impressed by Martinez's performances? Because I think BoxRec has Martinez ranked number one as the pound for pound best fighter in the world. What do you think?
I have trouble putting him in the number one spot just because of what Andre Ward's been able to do the last 2 years. So I think it could be a toss-up between him and Ward, but I'll lean toward Ward just a little bit. I guess people give him the number one contendership because of the fact he was a champion at 154, and I wouldn't argue against that. So, all right, pound for pound king, Sergio Martinez. The fight, however, on the other hand, I think it was a little different for me because I got to experience the atmosphere of people singing, of people just, enjoying having a good time and paying attention to the fight at the same exact time, which is unreal. Because the fight was going on for 3 minutes, then you'd party for that minute break. 3 minutes, minute break. It was incredible. It was I had never been to an event such as that. But when it comes to Martinez's performance, he stuck with the game plan. He stuck and moved. There's no reason for him to get in a slugfest against a guy who probably outweighed him by 15 pounds come fight night. Two guys weighed in. They both weighed in actually under the super middleweight limit of super welterweight limit of 160 pounds. It's middleweight, by the way. You gotta correct me, Jay.
But, Will's not here. He would have corrected you.
As far as his performance, I thought he did a good job. He was able to stick and move. He didn't have to put his arms up until that last round, the last 2 rounds. Sergio Martinez was just shooting from the hip, just snapping that jab. And even Freddie Roach was impressed by his speed. They didn't think he was going to be that fast. They didn't have any game plans. I don't know if you I went back and watched the fight just to see how people on television experienced it. And I liked that interview that Max Kellerman did in between or during the 11th round with Chavez, with Chavez's trainer, Freddie Roach. And he asked him, he's all, Freddie, do you guys think you could win? He said, do you think he can get a knockout? He said, I don't know, Max. I don't know. Like, admitting that his fighter was being outclassed. As far as Chavez, Sergio Martinez can't be blamed for Chavez not bringing the action. Chavez continued to try to find and corner Martinez. He just couldn't. He was too slow for him, too flat-footed for him. Give Sergio Martinez's performance an A-, and Chavez's a C-, to be honest. Yeah, you know what? A D+. If it weren't for that last round, he would have gotten an absolute F.
Well, let's break down the fight in terms of the beginning. There's really two parts. One, which Martinez just dominated him, and then the last two rounds in which Chavez Jr. made a fight. I mean, Chavez Jr. is known to be a slow starter. Well, why does it take him so long? I mean, if you're in a bout and the guy's repeatedly punching you in the face, why does it take you so long to respond? I mean, we're not fighters. We don't know, but that's the thing I do not understand. If someone is causing physical harm to you, why does it take too long? Why does it take so long for you to respond? Why did it take Chavez Jr. so long to just, put the pressure on Martinez? Because he hurt him with huge right hands. And you would see during the early parts of the fight, Chavez would land big shots, but did not follow up and couldn't capitalize. So what made the 11th and 12th round all of a sudden really just force Chavez Jr. to put on the pressure?
Because he knew he was out. The only chance he had to win the fight was by knockout, and he knew that he was being supported by 16,000 other Mexicans in that venue, and he had to save face by at least giving them a show, even if it was only 6 minutes worth of action.
Why didn't he give him a show in the beginning of the fight?
He really was just baffled and just, I guess, flabbergasted at the same time at the speed and the talent of Sergio Martinez. I think he was so involved in the trash talking, something he typically doesn't do about other fighters before his contest, with Sergio Martinez, that he completely lost focus, and when he finally saw the real thing, he was just shocked. He's never seen a guy this fast. If you think about it, Martinez is from 154 pounds, so he's moving up in weight, not making the full 160 pounds, so he's just quicker and he has that natural movement. Here's the difference. Martinez is a natural athlete. Chavez is he was a spoiled kid who probably had to apply himself too much in anything, because of the fact he had the upbringing he did. And I think the work ethic between both guys showed during 24/7 and showed at Fight Night, man.
Interesting. So let's break down the last two rounds. When you were in the arena, were those Argentina fans, were they nervous? What was the mood inside the arena? Could they sense the end was near for Martinez, or were you confident, were they confident that Martinez would pull through and survive towards the end of the fight? What was the atmosphere towards the last seconds?
Oh, crap. He might lose. You go confident 11 straight rounds, and then all of a sudden, one instant changes everything. It was at the minute 30 mark that Chavez threw almost what is punch. He's just so slick with the head movement back. You think of Roy Jones, who was actually good at just putting his head back with his hands down, but his arms were just long enough to catch him with that right hook. The crowd was just dead silent, and like I said, the sound from the Mexicans fans was just deafening. I had never heard any noise like that. You'd think someone hit a buzzer beater in the NBA Finals Game 7, the way that place erupted, man. And
I bet.
That gave Chavez that momentum to try to end it. But what people don't notice and what people don't recognize, that Martinez was throwing back, and there was one punch that kept Chavez from keeping either he was tired or it stopped him from pursuing. There was a huge left hook that Martinez did land to kind of keep Chavez at bay in the last 20 seconds. But yeah, I watched the replay, as I mentioned again, and this was going through my mind while I was watching it. Shadows of his father and Meldrick Taylor. Meldrick Taylor is a boxer, considered one of the best. When Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. was being destroyed by him, the cards I think 9-2 going into the last round, 8-3, and this was when Chavez, I believe, was about 8-0. That was his record, 88 no loss. Meldrick Taylor was cruising into a championship and into superstardom. when Chavez landed a huge right cross, brought Meldrick Taylor with 12 seconds left, forcing the ref to stop it with 2 seconds left. He wins by knockout, and the same spirit came out of Chavez Jr. and it was great to see that he does have that passion, even if it was momentarily, as much as his dad did for the sport. Man, what did you think of that when you were watching it?
Yeah, it was crazy because I came home and I caught the last bits of it live. I was over at a friend's house and I thought the fight started later, so I ended up missing the most of it. I caught the whole thing, a day later, but watching it live, I only caught the last couple of rounds, and it was really interesting to see Roy Jones Jr. Kind of make the comparisons between himself and Martinez, and really it was a stark comparison. Just the way Martinez was kind of fighting a little bit cocky. I mean, even inside the ring, he was really somewhat arrogant towards the end of that fight, and when Chavez Jr. caught him, I thought he was going to pull it off, especially with 10 seconds left to go. I think you made a really good point, Jorge. I think Martinez caught him, and Chavez Jr. just ran out of gas and couldn't just capitalize on it. And it just, I don't know. I mean, you have a good point about Martinez's speed advantage, but, besides those 2 rounds, I mean, Chavez Jr. had his moments where he landed those right hooks. I mean, and those were heavy punches that connected flush, and he just couldn't land combinations until the ending parts of that fight. I want to talk about 2 aspects. Before we heard the news about Chavez Jr.'s failed drug test, I was going to ask you about a possible rematch. But now, since that drug test happened, since Chavez Jr. failed and he tested positive for marijuana, is that going to affect a future rematch with Martinez? I mean, Martinez didn't really respect Chavez Jr. too much anyway. And now that Chavez Jr., got caught with icky. I mean, is Martinez likely or not likely to give a rematch?
I think he'll sit out for a little bit just because there are reports that Sergio Martinez will undergo right knee surgery sometime next week. He did have a minor tear in his right knee during that fight. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that goes down. And he also fractured his left hand.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
He has to be in a soft cast for a while. It doesn't need surgery, but, I mean, he is an older body, and it's going to take a while for him to heal. If they suspend Chavez, I don't think it'll be a full month suspension. Guess what? That still leaves the date of Cinco de Mayo weekend open for these 2 guys to fight once more in Las Vegas. Do people want to see a rematch? I think so, based on the fact that Chavez now knows that he can defeat and hurt Martinez. Do I want to see one? I wouldn't mind seeing it, but it's a dream as a hardcore boxing fan that Martinez fights someone like Golovkin that can fight him, or even a Daniel Geale who has been destroying people out of Australia. But that's not going to happen. These guys are the cash crops of that weight class. Sergio Martinez is one of the top 10 most popular guys in the sport of boxing. So I think the rematch between the 2 guys is more likely to happen than Martinez fighting anyone else in the top 5.
In terms of the drug test failure, can you compare Chavez Jr. and Nick Diaz? I mean, Nick Diaz had a lot of baggage. I mean, he's not exactly the most likable person in the world. It seems like Chavez Jr., I mean, he has the lineage. Do you see that factoring in with his punishment? I mean, he got caught before. I think it was, 2009, with marijuana used as a diuretic back then. And now I guess it's just marijuana just as a recreational drug. Do you see the commission being lenient on Chavez Jr., or do you see them dropping the hammer? What do you think?
I think they'll be lenient on the guy just because, one, of who his father is, and because the WBC, the Boxing Council, one of the belts in boxing, the president of it is his godfather. I think these guys have enough connections to actually make this be the most lenient slap on the wrist possible. And the fact that they want to save that day, I'm pretty sure, Jay, if I could put money on it, they're going to rematch this on Cinco de Mayo weekend. And the people in Vegas and the people in the council are going to try to make this thing possible.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the other fight that happened on that same night. It was in the MGM Grand. It was on Showtime. It was Canelo Alvarez beating Josecito Lopez in the 5th round via TKO. I think Canelo was very impressive. I think the commentators on Showtime put it best. He leaves himself open, which creates lots of opportunities for him to be spectacular. And I think he was, even though he faced an inferior opponent. So where does Canelo go from here? Is he in kind of a catch-22 situation since he's young? He's only 21. You don't want to rush his career. At the same time, you look at his record. I mean, he's already beaten somewhat of a who's who in the sport. So where does Alvarez go from now? Is he now a pay-per-view draw automatically? Or because of his age, you want to give him maybe a couple of more tune-up fights before you give him blockbuster, multi-million-dollar pay-per-views? Where does he go from here?
Like as I mentioned, the Vanes Martirosyan and Erislandy Lara fight is supposedly a elimination fight for his title, but we see this in boxing all the time. The number one contender waits about a year before they actually get that fight. I think the next fight that they're probably going to do is they're going to take the winner of Cotto Trout, hopefully, but more likely scenario, they fight James Kirtland or they fight Canine Brundridge, man. Just because of his age, he's 39, and the fact that he has the IBF title. If they're truly looking, if Golden Boy is truly trying to steer Canelo to unify all the titles, they're going to take it, the easiest route, and that's through Canine. Canine, being the age he is, he's not going to mind a 400, 500,000 payday if he does fight Canelo. So that's the route. I'd love to see him fight the winner of Cotto Trout, but it's waiting for 3.5 months for that. So most likely fight James Kirtland is next for him.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. I agree with you. I agree with you, Jorge. I just couldn't imagine that Trout Cotto fight, being much bigger with the fact that Canelo Alvarez, he's sitting ringside and the winner gets to fight him. I think that'd be fantastic. But like you said, I don't see that happening either.
We're having this Mexican dream fight between Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. and Saul Alvarez happening sometime next year. The law pushed it back another year and a half, I think. Canelo's going to try to clear house there at 154 pounds. And eventually, if he'd like, he'll move up. But by that point, it might be too late. Chavez might already be in the next weight class from there at 168 pounds. So because of the loss, I think it kind of takes from the steam that potential fight was building. But who knows, 3 years, 2 years down the line, this thing has about a couple of million pay-per-views if it does happen.
So you think Chavez Jr., if he recovers from this Martinez loss, this loss won't damage any future bout with Canelo if Chavez Jr. can pull it together?
I think so. If Chavez Jr. pulls off let's say he pulls off the next victory against Martinez, he redeems himself. Who knows? Maybe they have one more fight. He beats Martinez once more. Then they'll set up that fight with Canelo, I think.
Mm-hmm. Let's preview UFC 152, and it's just, man, how long has it been since we've previewed a UFC event? I mean, it's been all boxing within the last month or so, but now we shift our attention to MMA. It's going to be in Toronto, Canada, at the Air Canada Center. It's on pay-per-view, and it features John Jones, the champion, taking on the challenger, Vitor Belfort, for the light heavyweight championship. A lot of people are not giving Belfort too much of a chance. He is a massive underdog. We pretty much know the weaknesses of Vitor Belfort. He's a slow starter, but has huge, heavy hands. Is there any sort of a chance of Belfort winning? I mean, there are the factors of John Jones. He's distracted doing all the media obligations. He's been distracted dealing with the whole Dana White controversy. Does that factor in at all to help Belfort pull off the upset, or should we just look at it as just Belfort has no shot at winning at all?
I think it slightly does. I mean, a lot of those distractions, who knows? Especially, I mean, if you think about it, they did take this fight on somewhat a short notice still. So, does Vitor have a chance? I don't know, man. It's just the pride fan in me and the old school fan in me thinks so, but I just think John Jones, is going to outclass him. A lot of people think back to, oh, well, he did decent in that one round that he survived against Silva, but, I mean, this is a whole different weight class. He's obviously been in it before, but I just think the age difference, the athleticism, is just going to be too much, and I think John Jones will fairly win this one easily, maybe by a TKO stoppage, man.
Yeah, I picked that stoppage for round one. I just don't see Belfort being aggressive enough to make John Jones uncomfortable. I think everybody should kind of take a page out of Chael Sonnen's playbook as to being aggressive and making the champion uncomfortable. I think with a lot of these title fights, I just feel the champion is just too comfortable in there. They just give the champion too much respect. I mean, by the time the fight's over, they've done nothing, and the champions have their way with them. I just think you're in a title fight, you got to go in there and take it. And hopefully, Chael Sonnen started something with challengers starting to take the fight to the champion and not being tentative and trying to be too much reliant on the game plan and just fighting on instinct and just their ability and their talent to win alone. So we'll see. I think Belfort has a puncher's chance. He has heavy hands. We'll see what happens. The flyweight title's also on the line. Joseph Benavidez and Demetrius Johnson will decide the first ever flyweight champion. UFC finally did a tournament. A lot of fans were asking for it, and there was a debacle. It is a huge controversy with the scoring mistake in Australia with Demetrius Johnson and Ian McCall. So Johnson and McCall had to fight again. Johnson got the victory, and now here we are with Johnson and Benavidez fighting for the championship. There's been a lot of criticism over this fight in terms of these guys being little guys, being flyweights. Michael Bisping has criticized Joseph Benavidez. I know they were joking with each other, but still, I think that sentiment that Michael Bisping has, I think a lot of fans have too. So why should casual fans care about this weight class at all? I mean, in boxing, we're used to seeing, lighter weight classes all the time. But in MMA, I mean, it may come as a shock to see, these two athletes who are awesome, but, are small in stature going at it. So what's going to make the casual fan, not go for a bathroom break and check these guys out?
I think once they tune in and the speed these guys have and the fact that they're little, but, I mean, power translates to any weight that they're actually. If you see a spectacular knockout or, something an unreal athletic move, let's just say, for instance, these guys are a lot smaller, so, it's easy for them to be athletic there, whether it be on the ground, whether it be standing up. You might see a move that you've never seen before. That's why it's important to watch these guys. And I don't know how you feel, Jay, but when it comes to the lower weight classes and the UFC opening it up to them, I love them. I mean, we used to see some of the best fights. I mean, I know you can't really make the comparison to boxing, but let's not forget, here locally, Johnny Tapia is one of the best fighters of all time at 115 pounds just because of the power and athleticism that he actually had. And I think that could translate over to the UFC. Now, are we going to go see a 150-pound weight class, 115 weight class there in the UFC? No. But these guys deserve their shot just because of the raw entertainment style that they actually bring, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, it just takes personality. You know how it goes. I mean, Johnny Tapia, along with his talent, was a guy with lots of personality and lots of charisma and was able to use his talent, use his personality to get people to watch his talent in the ring. So I think with Benavidez and Johnson, they're nice guys, but they don't have that kind of personality to attract those casual fans. So that might be the only thing holding them back. I mean, that's what Ian McCall had. I mean, he had the nickname Uncle Creepy. I noticed some people, in the sports world tweeting about him that, wouldn't care about this guy at all beforehand. But, they saw the tattoos, they saw his personality, and they were engaged in what he was doing inside the octagon. So, just like another weight class, it just takes that one personality to and all of a sudden make people care about a division. So hopefully that happens for the flyweights. Let's talk about this other fight. Really, Michael Bisping and Brian Stann, they're going to be pretty much the co-main event, but they got bumped down to the third fight. Third from the top on the card, Bisping versus Brian Stann. Bisping came very close to beating Chael Sonnen. A lot of people thought he did beat Chael Sonnen. He didn't. What do you think about this fight at all? I think there's a lot on the line for Brian Stan. We've seen Stan in big-time middleweight contender fights, and he's come up short. So I think if he loses to Bisping, this might be his last chance at earning a future title shot. Do you agree, Jorge, or do you think because of Brian Stan's military background, if he loses here, he still have a couple more opportunities in his career to possibly get a title shot?
I think this may be it for Brian Stan, unless he's able to pull some, dramatic and incredible over, a span of 3 or 4 fights. It should be very interesting. When it comes to Michael Bisping, however, this is a guy that, I don't know, as weird as it sounds, I've grown to like, man. It should be, very interesting on how he bounces back from that Chael Sonnen loss, and that's earlier in the year, so we've seen this guy out of action for almost 9 months now. So, what do you think happens next to Bisping? Who do they line up for him after this? These guys are next.
Well, I think with Michael Bisping, the obvious middleweight out there is Chris Weidman. And I think everybody wants this super fight with Anderson Silva and George St. Pierre to happen. At the same time, they don't want the divisions to be stalled. You can't have it both ways. It has to be either one or the other. So I think what will probably end up happening is if Bisping gets through this fight, unscathed, and other than some facial lacerations, pulls it out with no injuries, I think fighting Chris Weidman is an easy event to do. The question is now, a lot of these cards towards the end of the year are already loaded. So, with this whole injury epidemic going on, maybe you save that fight for, if something unforeseen happens, which it probably will, to one of these title fights. Maybe you use Bisping or the winner of this fight, Stan or Bisping, to fight Chris Weidman in a main event towards the end of this year. So we'll see what happens. I think for Bisping, he's really improved. I do like his fighting style. I agree with you, Jorge. I think he's really improved the ground and his stand-up. I think what's going to hold him back is that he doesn't have the X factor and that aspect of his game that makes him a threat towards the championship. I think if he does fight Anderson Silva, I think it's going to beat him. He's going to have to fight a perfect fight to take him out, because I don't think he has the takedown ability of Chael Sonnen to pull off those takedowns. Sonnen, his wrestling background can carry him, through 4 rounds through Anderson Silva. Michael Bisping relies on his striking, and we all know Anderson Silva is the king of Muay Thai and this overall striking in MMA. So I think either way, the winner probably gets Chris Weidman.
So what's the deal with then? I don't understand if you think, I'm not criticizing you, but if you think that, these eventually one of these guys could possibly fight Anderson Silva, what's the purpose of him moving up to light heavyweight to fight Bonner in October?
Well, that's a desperation fight, man. They're desperate for a main event, and you know how it goes. Just like when he fought James Irvin, it's an exhibition, and even though the UFC won't say it, it's just they want to trot Anderson Silva in front of Brazil, and just to see him kill some poor light heavyweight fighter. Stephan Bonner, I think he's won 3 fights in a row, so he's a name. And he's easily sellable. He can sell a fight just because, he was in that whole, landmark fight with Forrest Griffin. So it's not so much Anderson Silva moving up to 205. I didn't think it's just a favor with Anderson for the UFC because of the whole UFC 151 thing.
Okay, fair enough. I guess that's a reasonable one. So what happens if Bonner knocks him out? It's not going to happen, but...
Hey, anything can happen, man. Who predicted Gabriel Gonzaga to use Cro Cop's own move against him? Yeah. I think if that were to happen, I just think all heck would break loose in the whole fight game. Dana White's world would come falling apart. I don't think it will happen. Stephan Bonner's not a knockout artist, so, there's little risk in putting Bonner into his fight, but, if the unforeseen thing happens, you create a new superstar with Stephan Bonner, but you destroy, Anderson Silva's, his relevance as a middleweight, and you destroy the super fight with GSP or John Jones, so.
and I'm just out of curiosity, I looked it up. Anderson Silva's a 14-1 favorite against Bonner. Bonner's a 7-1 underdog.
Wow.
Those are almost Canelo versus Josecito Lopez odds, man.
Unbelievable. So you've seen those, I was going to ask, you've seen those odds in boxing. Have you seen the odds bigger than that?
When it comes to, well, Canelo was a 20-1 favorite this past weekend, which is the highest I've seen in years. It's rare that you see a 10-1 underdog in boxing, but we've seen it before. Ever since Mike Tyson got knocked out by Buster Douglas, I believe that was something like 45-1 or underdog or something. Vegas has not messed with anything above 20. This 20-1 is the highest I've seen in a while. This may be the highest I've ever seen in MMA, to be honest.
Wow. Yeah, me too. I can't remember. I mean, really, you don't see lopsided fights in MMA, period. So I think you're right. I was corrected. Chris Weidman has a fight against Tim Boesch at UFC 155. I totally forgot. He had the elbow surgery to get the bone chips out of his elbow, so I thought he was out of commission. But apparently, he's going to fight Tim Boesch. So we'll see what happens. Like, it's, especially with all the injuries, and that fight's, still down the line at UFC 155. I think things could change. I mean, the way this year has gone, it wouldn't surprise me that fight doesn't even happen. Just the way this year has been wacky. So we'll see what happens. But I don't think either of these guys are getting a title shot, that's for sure, off a win. Unless Michael Bisping destroys Brian Stann in 2 seconds. Other than that. But Jorge, I want to talk to you real quick about Cub Swanson. You interviewed him. He has a fight coming up. And really, he's going to be on the main card against Charles Oliveira. This is a huge opportunity. Oliveira is really tough. Can you tell me what Swanson's mindset is like? How big of an opportunity this is for him? And also, his camp, Jackson's camp's been taking a lot of heat within fans and MMA media. Where's his mindset now going into this fight?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank him for joining me on Fight Week. For an interview, most fighters don't do that, but it was really, really nice for him to actually pull that off. But when it comes to his mindset, this guy's determined. He doesn't feel like he can lose. And I think he has a chip on his shoulder because of the criticism the rest of his gym has been taken. I don't know about you, Jay, but I've been curious and I've been looking at, blogs or these forums where people are, just dissing on the Jackson's Winklejohn gym. And people I see consistently, the only fighter I like out of there is Cub Swanson. Oh, screw everyone. They're boring fighters except Cub Swanson. That's all I'm seeing all over the place. So, you know what I mean? He took that with a grain of salt because, even though they appreciate him and his fighting style, but they're criticizing the gym that molded him into the fighter that he actually is. And as far as finally being on the main card, he did tell me he was very excited about the opportunity, and he loves being the attraction, being not necessarily like the main event guy, but that guy that you go and actually see to pay. There's a quote, if I can read real quick, that he actually dropped when I asked him about the criticism his gym's been receiving. He said, all the guys that they're talking crap about, the Clay Guidas, Condits, and John Joneses, these guys put on so many good fights. You have one fight that they don't appreciate, and then you suck. I'm very happy with my team. My teammates will always come bring a good show, and my team doesn't deserve that. Screw the haters is what he had to say. So, he's very passionate about his gym and about his teammates. And, if you think about it, you got to be offended by that, despite the fact that everyone is appreciative of the way you do things. It's like basically people telling you, oh, screw your family, you're the only cool one from it. But when you have that much for your love for your family, man, that's going to hurt you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Jackson's MMA is kind of like, they're kind of the Yankees of MMA, if you think about it. You have the championships, they have the high-profile names, they got the drama. I mean, you have everything that goes in line with a dominant team in sports. So, of course, they're going to get the criticism. And I think since, MMA is not portrayed as a team sport, all this, hatred towards them whenever a fight doesn't go as planned is kind of, it might hurt them more than usual. But I just think, you get the good, you got to take the bad with it. So I think for Cub Swanson, I wouldn't let the people kind of hating on him get too angry because once John Jones, if he destroys Vitor Belfort and Clay Guida gets another fight of the night and Carlos Condit sensational, everybody's going to forget. So it's just MMA fans have a short memory anyway. So
sports fans in general, I think a lot of the times have a just short-term memory. It's what have you done for me lately kind of attitude.
It is, exactly. Man, I think that's going to wrap it up. Anything else you wanted to add before we call it quits here?
Got a couple of things, a couple of fights being broadcasted on NBC Sports, I believe. Gabriel Rosado, who I'm, specifically lean toward here, the Philadelphia fighter of Pennsylvania. He's got a record of 20-5, but he's put on together a string of great victories in his last 7 bouts. He's fighting a guy by the name of Charles Whitaker, who's a vet into the game. But Rosado was one of the first boxers I ever interviewed. He was out here helping Ray Sanchez, the third, train for his fight against Chavez Jr. here in Albuquerque. So it was crazy to be back in the venue with Chavez Jr. performing, because the last time I had seen him was 5 years ago here. There's also another thing here coming up on Monday. I don't know how many fans we have in New York, man, but they're actually starting the press conferences and the media blitzes for the Cotto Trout fight that's happening December 1st. Of course, Austin Trout's fighter here from Las Cruces, New Mexico, WBA world champion. September 1st at El Museo del Barrio there in New York City is the first conference. The doors open to the public at noon, so make sure you go check that out. And tickets actually go on sale, I believe, Tuesday the 25th. They range from $50 to $500. And $500 wasn't that bad when I thought about it, if you could sit ringside for this fight.
Yeah, especially in Madison Square Garden.
No, definitely. So it's going to be wild. I'm going to try my best to get a credential out there, man. I got people hooking me up with hotels and flights. So keep your fingers
on.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. One more thing about here locally.
Sure.
Fidel Maldonado Jr., who's the best boxing prospect out of the town. He's dropped 2 losses consecutively. The last one very controversially. He's looking to get back in the ring October 27th here locally at the Kiva Auditorium here in town.
I wonder how many. That's the first time I've ever heard of a boxing event at the Kiva Auditorium.
It's probably been years, man. I'm sure back in the day they would actually have those fights, but I can't remember the last time they actually had a bout there.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's going to end our show. I'll just take care of this housekeeping things, and then we'll say goodbye. FightFans Radio, you can find them on every social media platform, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Ustream. Just use the FightFans Radio username, and you'll find all that content there that has their Twitter updates, Facebook updates, and all of our all the LowBlow shows along with the rest of the FightFans Radio Network family. You can get in touch with our show specifically through @LowBlow, through lowblow505@gmail.com, and through Facebook through LowBlow Podcast on this /rightafter.com. So check that out. We're on the Stitcher Radio app and iTunes. So for Jorge and the sick Will McClary, I'm Justin Goodrum, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.
This has been a Low Blow on FightFans Radio, USCombatSports.com, and SouthwestFight.com. We'll see you next week.